Seest thou the road to all that's foul?
Okay, y'all. It's hot. Let's get this video started. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with Agatha, but I have. And let me tell you, 1, I'm a nerd for Marvel. 2, I love witches and I love anything witchy. I literally have, as you guys saw, if you guys haven't, I have a tattoo to her. I'll link it in the description. I have a tarot card tattoo. I have the Lover's card, but I made it a big gay. I'm gonna be talking about Agatha all along and giving my opinions, giving my theories. At first I was like, do I want to do like an episode by episode? But I don't know how to do that. I'm gonna do that for the finale though, so watch for that because I will be recording my reaction to the 2-part finale because this is my show. Anyways, let's get started. Let's get started on Agatha. So when we think about Agatha, obviously we know her from WandaVision. We know her from the comics, but they did a little different take on Agatha within the MCU, the cinematic universe. And I personally like it a lot. I don't know where they're going to continue with Agatha and Wanda's relationship because as of right now, we don't even know if Wanda is dead or alive. I know Ashley's rooting for her. I'm rooting for her.
I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare you?
But Agatha, she's represented also with the tarot card 3 of Swords. And I want to get into Rio and Agatha because when we're first introduced to Agatha, obviously she's in the Hex. She goes to a crime scene. It looks like somebody who has been touched by the Darkhold. And we can only assume that means Wanda. And then on the death card in the mortuary or in the morgue, it says W. Maximoff on I think October 13th. But we later on meet Rio. In the first fight that they ever had, she literally popped up and was like, I know she popped up as a detective, but when the Hex broke, she popped up and was like, boom, we're fighting. But we were friends. I guess we're not. So we're fighting then. The tension they had with each other. Was like, I can go into the TV and reach for it. It was insane how palpable and tangible their tension was between each other. So even off the first episode, I can tell that Rio and Agatha had history. Be who you are for your pride. I didn't know what the history was. But we find out when they're sitting in the campfire and they're talking about their scars, their own personal scars. Rio opens up and says that her scar isn't physical, it's a person. Well, it's not physically on her body, it's a person. And that she had to do something to this person that hurt them. And we're just like, what did she have to do? Because while she's saying this story, she's also like slyly kind of looking at Agatha because Agatha's sitting right beside her but kind of behind her. And then Agatha's like looking like, don't tell the full story because then I'm gonna cry because I'm traumatized. So we can only assume from then that I assumed that Rio had something to do with Nicholas Scratch. Now I knew from the beginning who Rio was because of I'm like really big into the comics, but also because of the leak with Funko Pop. And we know Rio is Lady Death, but in the campfire we didn't know who they were, or we didn't know who Rio was. But I assumed from that I was like, okay, so maybe Rio had something to do with Nicholas Scratch. And Nicholas Scratch is Agatha's son, who a lot of us are theorizing, and I don't know if it's confirmed or not in the comics, who she sacrificed or had to sacrifice in order to obtain the Darkhold. Because Agatha was also a holder of the Darkhold. And when Rio first said that, it kind of clicked in my head like, oh, she had something to do with Nicholas Scratch. Maybe because she's death, she had to collect his body. And Agatha wasn't very happy about that. I've also seen some theories where a lot of people are saying that Agatha made Rio turn into death. Because we know that Agatha is a witch and she's really old. Like she's from the coven, the Salemite coven. And so her mom, Evanora, like they're really, really old. I probably wouldn't say ancient, but they're very old witches and very powerful witches. So we know that Rio in the song, The Witch's Ballad, The Witch's Road, we know that they need a green witch. And when they summon a green witch, Rio pops up. So how is she the Green Witch but also death? And that's where I was kind of stuck. Because I'm like, I really don't know. Like, because she even says it in the show. She's like, I'm the original Green Witch.
So, you're a Green Witch?
Less a Green Witch, more the Green Witch.
So how are you the original Green Witch and also death? Another thing I'm slumped about is Wanda's status, whether she's alive, in limbo, or deceased. Because in this recent episode, when Teen and Agatha are walking, Teen is like, oh, talking about his mom. And he says something about his mom. He asks if
Is Wanda Maximoff really dead?
Yes.
No. Maybe.
other thing that made me like question Wanda's status, whether she's dead or alive, is when the sigil broke and he can like the big reveal of who Teen was. Agatha in the next episode said that now every witch can hear you, and it's like, oh, so does every witch mean Wanda? I'm kind of curious too. Like, I don't know if Wanda's, like the body we saw in the woods, like by the creek or by the little river stream, if that was part of Wanda's hex. Because we know that Agatha was in a hex before Billy broke it. So was that part of Agatha's, like was that part of Agatha's like little curse that Wanda put on her, where Wanda's making her think that she's dead but she really isn't? I want to get into Teen. We don't know who Teen is, the identity of Teen, until episode 5. Because when we first meet him, we don't know his real name. Because when he says it, it's covered by a sigil, who we know now was put on by Lilia, one of my favorites ever, other than Teen. She's one top down, top two. Her and Teen are. So we know that at the same time. We know that at the same time as Teen's, as William Kaplan's car was crashing with his family, we know that the dome was erasing. And we hear Tommy say goodnight to Billy and Billy say goodnight to Tommy. And then when William Kaplan wakes back up, he said, Tommy! He screams for Tommy. So insinuating, and we literally hear the heartbeat stop. Like William died. And then Billy entered his body. Billy Maximoff entered William Kaplan's body. So when that reveal happened, I was literally shook because I was like, thank you for confirming. And Billy's tarot card that he identifies with is also the Tower reversed. And when he gets his card read by Lilia, the Tower reverse symbolizes transformation, journey, and kind of two paths. I think it's really cool that when he's getting his cards read by Lilia, you can see when it's framing him, and then in the mirror you can see Billy, like Joe as Billy. I think that's like so cool. And Lilia knew all along, like, that this was his destiny. This is what was gonna happen. And then when she puts that sigil on him, she completely forgets what she did. I want to talk about how I kind of knew that he was Billy, or like what kind of confirmed it, because in the trailers, it showed that Teen had blue magic.
Wait, stop! Why are you, what? What?
And Billy has blue magic in WandaVision, and in the comics, he has blue magic. So I was like, okay, this is kind of them confirming through a trailer for the people who read the comics or research the comics, and the people who like know WandaVision. And if they really like pay attention, they'll know that this blue magic means something. The color of the magic means something. So I also want to talk about a theory that I've been reading a lot about and talking to one of my friends about, is the theory of Rio coming to take Billy because in her eyes he cheated death by going into William Kaplan. So I think that it's a good theory. I don't know if they're gonna go on to that theory, but I think it is a good one because, again, we see when in episode 4, when they're doing Alice's trial and they're in that like retro 60s, 70s house where Agatha and Rio are talking in the studio, and Agatha turns on the intercom and you can hear Rio say like, I want my bodies, like I'm here to collect bodies. And like why is she collecting bodies? I don't know what witch collects bodies. Who is she here to collect? Like, is she here to collect Billy? Like, is she here to collect, like, you know what I mean? Like, other witches who die when we already know who has died so far. R.I.P. Alice. R.I.P. Lilia. We don't talk about her. It's still fresh. It's literally last week. But, like, who is she here to collect? Because before that, none of them had passed other than Miss Hart. And I don't think she collected Mrs. Hart. It made sense to me because I was like, of course she would be mad that he cheated death. You know what I mean? Because he's possessing another body and he's alive and he has powers and he cheated death to find his mom when he should have disappeared. The next person I want to talk about, briefly mentioned before, is Lilia. So Lilia is represented by the Queen of Cups tarot card. And I actually like the tarot card promotion because it brings in actual people who love tarot, who study different forms of divination, who practice divination. It brings them into a world that they probably never would have thought to come into before Agatha all along. And so I love Lilia because when we first meet her, she's like a scammer tarot card reader, a scammer psychic, where you think she's fake and she's like in this like rinky-dink shop but that she lives in, but she's actually a real witch. But her main form of practice is divination, which is tea leaves, tarot cards, crystal ball, like all these things, you know, whether it's shells and all these old practices. And Lilia is, I think, decades, if not thousands of years old. And she was born in Italy. At first was confused with Lilia is why, like, she, like, would have these random bursts of thoughts. Like, when she told, like, try to save Agatha. When she told that to Agatha in the first trial. And Agatha was like, what do you mean? And then she came back. And then when she would, like, randomly say tarot cards, like, she would randomly say Knight of Wands when Alice, I think, was trying to protect Agatha. Or she would say the High Priestess when she looked at Jen. She would randomly say these things and we didn't know what they meant. Or at the campfire. But in episode 7, we find out that she lives her life out of sequence. And she says time is an illusion. She starts harnessing that power, or I guess, I wouldn't say a gift or a curse, but she starts harnessing that she does live her life out of sequence, and she starts putting pieces together and using it to her advantage. So like in episode 7 with Lilia, in episode 7 they really focus on Lilia. So when I talk about Lilia a lot, it's going to be majority of episode 7. We lean into Lilia's powers and we learn about her more. We learn about her life in Italy, not necessarily through scenes, but as she's talking when she's younger, because a lot of the episode is her going back to when she's like doing, like practicing divination with her, I'm assuming, the head of her coven at the time. And it's like, okay, are we going back in the past? Like, are we having flashbacks? But you later on realize it's not flashbacks. It's she's living her life out of sequence. She's going back and forth from the past, present, future to like figure these things out and to figure out how to beat this trial in a sense. And I found it really interesting how they closed a lot of the gaps when it came to the things that she would randomly say. So like, for example, when she said, get off of me, like when she, like in the first episode when she said, get off of me, and Agatha and Tina were like, what? That's because in episode 7, when Agatha like tackled her so that she doesn't get stabbed by a sword, she said, get off of me. But she lives her life out of sequence, so that get off of me was like, she said that in the first episode before it happened, but in that moment, she was in episode 7 in that point of time. Also, when she said, you know, we really hated each other from the beginning, but now I love you guys. And she said, I love you guys in the first trial. But when she said, I know we really hated each other, but from each other from the beginning, but now, that was at the campfire. And then, like, I just thought it was casual speech. And then she was like, wait, like, she snapped out of it. And I was like, oh, that was something. Or when she even said, I hated this the first time. She was talking about the first time the first time that ever happened to her. Like, she was talking about that. And then when she said, Alice, Alice, don't, when they were in the 70s trial 2 for Alice's trial, and then it connected to when she said, try to save Agatha, to Agatha in the first trial.
Honest.
Alice. Alice, don't try to save Agatha.
Yes, I love this plan. I just think that maybe we should find the ingredients first, though, right?
They connected to Alice, Alice, don't try to save Agatha. Because, as we know, when Alice tried to save Agatha in Agatha's trial from her mother, Evanora Harkness, Alice ended up dying. And Lilia was trying to warn her, but because she lived her life out of sequence, it wasn't possible for her at the time because she didn't know how to harness that ability. She put the pieces together, and like she finally figured out how to harness her powers in order to save her coven, which eventually led to her fall. And I don't want to say the D word just because it hurts, but it ended up, leading to her fall, and she knew it would happen. And then when Lilia had to make that sacrifice and the door opened and then the Salem 7 came in, because you saw the animals, the snake, the rat, the coyote, you saw the animals that represented the Salem 7, Lilia was like, I know what to do. So as they were walking out, she closed the door on Jen, and before she closed it, she literally said, I loved being a witch.
Lilia, I loved being a witch.
And that hit me a lot because it just showed you, like, that moment, it kind of gave, like, a full circle moment because she was so against joining the coven, especially because Agatha was the one leading them. And for her to end up loving the place that she's at, accepting that she's a witch, loving that she's in this coven because she couldn't control what happened to her first coven in Italy. They all fell ill. She saw it coming and she warned them, and she could do nothing about it. She knew that this was going to be her end, and she was content with it. And she was content with how it ended and the people she was with while it happened. And she literally told her, I loved being a witch. And closed the door.
And closed the door. And closed the door.
And she falls, she lets go. And she knows what happens when she lets go. And we don't see it, but she falls and then it blacks. And then it goes to her, where she was in the beginning, sitting on the table with her coven leader and getting a lesson. So in my eyes, she didn't die. I think that she just is living her life again, but maybe in sequence. Hopefully. Next character I want to talk about is Alice. And the tarot card that represents her is the Knight of Wands. So with Alice, I have always had open-ended questions about who Alice was. So before she worked at Hot Topic, obviously we know that she's a blood witch. Her mother was a witch. Her mother was the famous Lorna Wu, a singer, who was a witch, and so Alice was born making her a witch. I've always wondered who her mother was exactly, and we get to find out more who her mother was in her trial. So in the second trial, usually with trials, a house appears or something appears where I have to walk there because this is my trial. With Alice, when that 70s looking house appears, that all wood 70s looking house appears, Alice is like, I'm turning the other way. Bye, I'm leaving. I was always like, it's a house. It has to mean something. So obviously when we enter the house, we know that, from what I'm assuming, this was either her childhood home or Lorna's home before she had Alice. But Alice had to be somewhat familiar with this home because if she didn't want to go in, she had to be somewhat familiar. So I was thinking maybe this is either her childhood home or a home that she would frequent with her mother because there was a studio and instruments where probably her mother would record her songs or her albums. Find out that Alice's mom died in a fire on the road. But we all this time we think that Lorna actually went on the witch's road. But no, what she meant by on the road this whole time was on tour, because her mom is an artist. So we find out that Alice's family has this curse and that her mother made her own version of the Witch's Road ballad to protect Alice, because there's always somebody playing the ballad, whether it's anywhere across the world or someone singing it, so it's always protecting Alice. We found out in episode 4. We found out because when that demon popped up, because people were like burning, like people were getting burned, and I was like, what's happening? Why aren't people getting burned? And they were getting burned in the same exact place Alice had her scars. And what I'm assuming, maybe every female in her family had these scars because of the curse. They're singing Lorna's version of the Witch's Road ballad, and then all of a sudden the house is getting into flames, boom, 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 and then we see the demon. And the demon is like, and I'm like, girl. And the demon's like, and I'm like, oh no. What are we gonna do? And then I was literally brought to tears because Alice was like, I can take it down, period. And I'm like, get it, girl. And the demon literally flies towards the camera and then lands on Alice. And I'm like, oh, well, Alice is dead. Boom, she's dead. And then when she goes like this, everyone's looking like, what the hell is gonna happen? And then in that moment, the demon turns into flames. Boom, deceased. All of them equally were denying that this was a coven. They were just like, we're here for our own benefit, bye. If we make it, we make it. And through these trials, they're figuring out that they're more and more a coven than they thought they were. Because of that, that ends up leading to Alice's, from what we know as of right now, her demise. Because in Agatha's trial, Alice tries, because Alice has protection magic, she's a protection witch. And Alice tries to protect Agatha from her mother. And Evanora possesses Agatha one last time. Alice blasts her magic, which we didn't know she had. Maybe she gained it that moment. She blasts her orange magic onto Agatha. But then, unknowingly, I don't know if Agatha had control. I don't think she did, because it didn't look like she did. She starts sucking up Alice's power. After Billy says, Nicholas Scratch, you hear, Mommy, Mommy. And then Agatha's like, hold up, who's calling me? But it was too late, and Agatha, the door opened, the trial was complete, Agatha got out, and Alice is just lying there, dead, decrepit. We see everybody come out, but Rio, which also made me think Rio is death, because I think she went to collect her body. But then a trailer 2 came out, and it shows Alice alive, but it's like the mood is very damp, like, not damp, it's very just dark, and like it's very, not sepia, but it's like, just the tone of the scene is like if she was in another realm. And it makes me think that, is she in a purgatory? Is she trapped in some sort of purgatory? Are we gonna see like what happens to the witches when Agatha takes their magic and they die? Like, are they sent to another realm? Are their souls like sent to a different type of death? Where did Rio take her? Because Rio is death. So where did Rio take her? You know what I mean? And so that's what I've been thinking, because she's seen in future teasers. She's seen in scenes where we haven't seen them in any episode. Next, I want to talk about Rio. And I know I've talked about Rio in almost every single one, because in all honesty, I think Rio plays an important and huge part in this series. Even though she might not be seen as much, I think there's a reason why she isn't seen as much. I feel like she's gonna play a bigger part in episode 8 and 9. So we find out in episode 7 through Lilia that Rio is death, who I'm pretty sure we've all been speculating she is death or some form of death because of all the signs that we've been seeing. When she says that she had to do something to somebody that she hurt, take somebody away, do something, and it really hurt somebody. I really think she had something to do with Nicholas Scratch's either death, or she like didn't tell Agatha she was death, so when Nicholas died, or like she said like, here, do you want the Darkhold, but you have to give up this. And she didn't know what she had to give up until the moment happened and Rio had to take away Nicholas. And I think that I really, really, truly think, because we see in trailers, that I think we're going to get flashbacks of Rio and Agatha's relationship in the beginning. Maybe how she became Death. If she wasn't already Lady Death, how she became that. And then their history. And then obviously I think an epic final battle, because the way that they be snatching, that Rio was snatching Agatha up, because we see plants, like prickly plants, snatch up Agatha from a house. So I'm like, what is that? Whose house is that? And then plants. Rio is the original Green Witch. She said it herself. Let's see what happens with episode 8 and 9. You guys will be getting my reaction with that too, because I'm filming that for sure. But now I want to talk about Jen. Not that they give us so much about Jen, but what I do love about Jen is that, one, she's very opinionated, period. I love that she's in it for herself and herself alone in the beginning, and somewhat even now. And when Lilia closes the door on her, she really wants Lilia, like, to come with them. Like, she's not just in it for herself. She sees herself as part of a coven now. I don't know if she completely likes or trusts Agatha, or even Billy, because of what Billy did to Jen and Lilia when he threw them into the mud, the quicksand. But she sees them somewhat as a coven and a unit now. I can only assume. But when we first meet Jen, we meet her in her store. She's trying to sell skincare to a customer. And I think it makes so much sense for someone who their main craft is potions, that she would have a skincare line. Like lotion, candles, skincare, like all these things. Like, she would have that kind of brand and that kind of product. Because if you make potions, like, that's basically what skincare is. A bunch of chemicals mixed together, which is almost like a potion. But I also think that her story, I want to know more about, because we don't know that much more about her story other than in her trial. I'm assuming it's her trial. I think it's the first trial, when they're in the house, and then when they're all seeing, like, these visions of their past, and she sees a man at the sink, a doctor, and then she reveals that that doctor took her into, like, this conference, and that's where they bound her. You can't bind anybody without the powers of another witch. So either he was a witch, or there was another witch who helped him figure out how to bind Jen. Lilia, like, hints at her having immense power. She calls her the High Priestess. She calls her, like, this priestess, this person who has great power, but that person sometimes is unable to, because she's bound, or unwilling to use that immense power within her. We have one more character left, guys. And that's Mrs. Hart. So, with Mrs. Hart, you know, she was in WandaVision, and we love her. She wasn't a witch, but Agatha didn't want to initially, because, you know, when Lilia wrote the black heart on the paper of who the coven was, the black heart she thought meant Rio, because Rio tells her, my heart is black. Like, she says something along the lines of, my heart is black. Her heart is black. I forgot exactly what it was, but she hints to a heart being black. And so when Agatha sees black heart, she immediately thinks of Rio. But then obviously they ended up summoning her anyways, because she's the Green Witch they needed. Miss Hart, so she grabs Miss Hart literally as she's gardening, and she's like, you're a Green Witch enough. You're a gardener. Let's go. Help us open the Witch's Road. And she's like, okay, we're gonna have, like, a wine night with the girlies. Like, we're gonna kiki and just spill about our husbands and talk all this mess. No. They opened the road. She climbed in. She's like, where am I? Get me out of here.
I just want to have a wine night with my girlies.
And even in trial 1, she's like, I'm just trying to have fun. I'm just trying to drink my wine, talk about my husband, talk about, if she has a husband. I think she does. I think he dies. I'm not sure. I'm trying to just talk about my life. I'm just trying to talk about my struggles, my problems. That wine ended up leading to them looking like they got botched.
Oh, you are so sweet. I don't really think I need it either.
And then, from then, it led to her ultimate demise and her death. The potion affected her because her hair, her DNA was not in the potion. So I was like, girl. They literally grabbed her, threw her down the oven, because that's where the door opened for the next trial, for them to exit the trial. And they got washed up, because of the water, they got washed up, And then she was lying there, dead, deceased, lying there, still, as a board. And they're just like, she's dead. And they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, this is, when you're a witch, you're used to death. I think Jen said that even, when you're a witch, you're used to this. So, R.I.P. Lilia. Oh, I don't want to talk about it. She's not dead. She just restarted life again. Hopefully in sequence. You know, we're going to manifest that for her. You know, R.I.P. Mrs. Hart, because she's for sure dead. And then, let's R.I.P. Alice. But in the hopes that we can Uno reverse that in episode 8 or 9. Or at least maybe see a little bit more of what happens to her after she dies. Maybe we'll get to see like what Rio does, you know, as Lady Death. So happy that I was able to talk to you guys about this because I love these kind of things. I will be reacting to episode 8 and episode 9, and I will be posting that video either Friday, like this Friday, or this Saturday, depending on how my schedule is looking, because I will be recording on Wednesday, the day of the 2-part season finale. So I'm extremely excited. I hope you guys liked this kind of character dissection, this theories. Hopefully I didn't give too much spoilers, because there's so much more to go into with a lot of these characters, but I wanted to stay kind of surface and dig as much as I could, because I don't want to dig too much and spoil anything about these characters you might not know about yet. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next video in about, I want to say, a couple days. I'm going to give you a what does RuPaul say? Sashay away.
Blood and tears and bones, maiden mother crone.